The yeas are 174, the nays are 235, one voting present, two-thirds not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed.
So get this. After Donald Trump followed Elon Musk's lead in killing the bipartisan spending bill that would keep the government running over the perception that there's too much wasteful spending, they bullied Moses Mike Johnson into introducing a new one with even more wasteful spending on the things Elon wants. But 38 Republicans voted it down too.
What we're doing right now is to continue to double down on the things that are destroying the republic. We are going to increase the debt ceiling, not just $4 trillion, that's false. We have spent $4.7 trillion in additional debt in the last 19 months. We're going to increase the debt by $5 trillion. That's what's going to happen right here by Republicans, increasing the debt $5 trillion. And what are you doing in the same bill? $110 billion unpaid for. Because you never have any ounce of self-respect to go out and campaign saying you're going to balance the budget, and then you come in here and pass $110 billion unpaid for. On top of the $200 billion you did for WEP, you guys won't agree with that, but the fact of the matter is $330 billion. Congratulations, you've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful.
Republican Chip Roy was obviously one of the Republicans that voted against the slimmer bill that added trillions of dollars in debt while eliminating funding for programs that help everyday Americans. But he wasn't even done.
To take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine. And that's precisely what Republicans are doing. I'm absolutely sickened by a party that campaigns on fiscal responsibility and has the temerity to go forward to the American people and say, you think this is fiscally responsible. It is absolutely ridiculous because this side of the aisle is profoundly unserious about actually reducing deficits, just as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are profoundly unserious about reducing deficits. The entire body has been racking up debt for my entire life. $36 trillion, $1 trillion of interest. We rack up $1 trillion every 100 days. And what are we going to do about it? We're going to run around and talk about cutting taxes, but not doing what's necessary to cut the spending along with the cut taxes.
The Republican followed up his rant with a post illustrating what he's talking about. Old bill, $110 billion in deficit spending, unpaid for. $0 increase in the national credit card. New bill, $110 billion in deficit spending, unpaid for. $4 trillion plus debt ceiling increase with $0 in structural reforms for cuts. Time to read the bill? 1.5 hours. I will vote no. And in response to Elon Musk flooding X with ridiculous information meant to create an alternate reality where MAGA supports his continued robbery of the country, a senior fellow from the Manhattan Institute clarified his lies by posting, both bills contain nearly the same huge spending increases, and the smaller one also gave Washington a 2-year blank check to bury the budget in debt. But sure, let's judge legislation solely by their page count. I hope Doge grows a bit more sophisticated than this. This isn't the first time Chip Roy voiced his disgust with the hypocrisy his fellow Republicans show all the time in Congress. But he usually avoids crossing the president-elect because the entire party is afraid of the man-child throwing tantrums like he did once Roy went off. The very unpopular congressman from Texas, Chip Roy, is getting in the way, as usual, of having yet another great Republican victory, all for the sake of some cheap publicity for himself. Republican obstructionists have to be done away with. The Democrats are using them, and we can't let that happen. Our country is far better off closing up for a period of time than it is agreeing to the things that the Democrats want to force upon us. Biden is president, and it's his obligation to properly lead. We're there to do the right thing, and we can't agree with what Biden and the Democrats are demanding. Weak and ineffective people like Chip have to be dismissed as being utterly unknowledgeable as to the ways of politics and as to making America great again. Put America first and go for the victory, even if it means shutting the government down for a period of time. We had an overwhelming victory just 4 weeks ago, and we're not going to let Democrats forget it so quickly. In other words, Trump wants to follow Elon Musk's lead to literally control every branch of government before he's even sworn in, screw things up, and still blame everyone else. But especially Joe Biden, for it. Then he focused in even more on Chip Roy. Chip Roy is just another ambitious guy with no talent. By the way, how's Bob Good doing? I hope some talented challengers are ready in the great state of Texas to go after Chip in the primary. He won't have a chance. If you don't do the bidding of the dictator, you get punished by the dictator. Reporters caught up with the fiery congressman about the things that Trump posted about him, and for some reason, the fire was gone and some fear kicked in.
So Trump is saying you're getting in the way of a Republican victory for cheap publicity. What's your reaction to that?
I've been able to read. All we're doing is trying to talk about how to get a deal done so we can actually cut spending.
Do you plan to talk to him to smooth things over?
I don't even know what we're talking about. I got to look at whatever was put out there. But I know we've just been having a conversation.
People like Chip have been dismissed as utterly unknowledgeable as to the ways of politics and as to making America great again. Put America first and go for victory.
We're working right now on how to actually cut spending, which is what the voters sent me to Washington to do. So that's what we're working on.
Once he heard Trump is planning on coming for his throat, Chip calmed down. But he still claims he's fighting to cut spending, which sadly includes the spending that American taxpayers that don't make billions of dollars expect something out of. But ever since Elon Musk began operating as the shadow president-elect, other Republicans are able to use him as a way to criticize Trump's actions without actually naming Trump.
We just spoke to a Democratic senator about that. But your two Republicans here were 24 hours away from a shutdown. You voted differently on a bill tonight that would have saved this. The question is Republicans not being able to get on the same page here. So what happens next? Have you heard from leadership about what the plan is?
That's been my big frustration to begin with. We brought this yesterday. Everybody said, oh, this is horrible, but we didn't even bring it to the floor because everybody knew it was going to be defeated. Then today, we launched this bill without talking to really anybody in the conference about what we changed. And then I was accused of surprising people, of blindsiding people by my opinion, when I was never consulted in the first place. This is a leadership challenge that Mike Johnson has to define himself with. Are you going to get the right input from the right people to get this bill passed? Because quite frankly, you can't do it in a vacuum. And it doesn't matter because quite frankly, last time I checked, Elon Musk doesn't have a vote in Congress. Now, he has influence, and he'll put pressure on us to do whatever he thinks the right thing is for him. But I have 760,000 people that voted for me to do the right thing for them. And that's what matters to me.
Let's put aside the fact that Representative McCormick here has been in multiple interviews advocating to cut Social Security and Medicare for weeks when he now talks about doing something for his constituents. But let's think about the irony of these Republicans suddenly questioning the authority and intelligence of Elon Musk now that he's shown to be a complete idiot that only has influence because he bought the presidency. Their ass-kissing for the past year during the campaign season doesn't work out the same when it's time to turn slogans into policy. It's a lesson Trump has never learned either.
Just moments ago, Donald Trump took to social media to put out his latest statement. These are significant because it is clearly having an impact on what Republicans are doing or not doing when it comes to keeping the government funded. Here is what he put on Truth Social. We'll read it for you. We'll read it all together. If there is to be a shutdown of government, let it begin now under the Biden administration, not after January 20th under Trump. This is a Biden problem to solve, but if Republicans can help solve it, they will.
So after telling Republicans to sit, heel, and roll over because Elon Musk told him the same, this guy somehow thinks that he can watch the building he set fire to burn and still blame Biden for it. We said it a million times during the campaign. We already saw what a Trump presidency is like. It's destruction and self-interested moves with a constant shifting of the blame to Democrats. But this time, he expects to do even worse, with even less accountability, because MAGA told him that he could. So how's all that greatness going?
Mr. Vance, will you accept any deal that does not include a debt limit increase?
Look, I'll say one thing. The Democrats just voted to shut down the government, even though we had a clean CR, because they didn't want to give the president negotiating leverage during his first term, or during the first year of his new term. And number two, because they would rather shut down the government and fight for global censorship bullshit. They've asked for a shutdown, and I think that's exactly what they're going to get.
38 Republicans vote against it as well. What's the path forward, Mr. Vance?
Come on, guys.
What will be your policy in Syria?
It must really suck to publicly insert yourself into a negotiation with no clue about what you're doing, only for it to blow up in your face because your own party is beginning to realize how clueless you are. It leaves J.D. Vance fuming as he tries to blame Democrats for what they got themselves into. So, as usual, the only thing that'll continue to save them from finally being held accountable to the American people is our standard response to keep letting them shift the blame to powerless Democrats.
They literally can't do the basics. We have passed the least amount of bills in this Congress because of the Republicans. And let me remind you, because you brought up the debt ceiling. Remember why the last speaker got kicked out? It was because he raised the debt ceiling and all of it. And Trump was the one calling for his head. Now he's like, raise the debt ceiling. You know why? Because his Trump tax cuts, this old con that he has, right, that helps out all the billionaires that he's putting into his administration, or at least is hoping to put into his administration, those Trump tax cuts, they expire in 2025. Mind you, he is the only president we've ever had that in one term ran our debt up to $8 trillion. So he already knows he's about to run our debt up, so he doesn't want to have to deal with the debt ceiling. Instead, he wants us to do it. Listen, I ain't got no favors for you, Trump. When you get here, then yes, you will have the House, the Senate, as well as the White House, and y'all can see if y'all can figure it out.